The truth of suffering. So in Buddhism, the truth of suffering, when we think about that, we think about 3 types of suffering. One is the suffering of suffering, which is the suffering which is very obvious to everyone. So when the fear arises in the mind, the suffering that comes with that reaction in the body and the mind, that is the suffering of suffering. But then there is a more subtle layer to suffering. And so the next layer is the suffering of change. And the suffering of change refers to all the pleasant experiences that we have, which look like our happiness, or which is our happiness. And so Buddhism says the suffering of the happy feelings that we have, the pleasant feelings that we have, is actually in nature a suffering. Why is it a suffering? Because that pleasure that we have doesn't last. There is always a moment that it turns into less pleasure and eventually displeasure. So for instance, if I have a chocolate and I think, that's nice, right? Then I think, oh, I'll have another one. And then I take another one and my stomach already starts to feel a little bit painful, but I think, wow, it's still nice in my mouth, and then maybe I have another one. Until I feel, oh, no, I don't want to have a chocolate anymore, right? So then the pleasure turns into suffering. And whatever we do in this world, any pleasure that we have in this world, if you think about it and you think that you keep doing that same thing, keep having that experience, how long can you do it? With everything that we experience, there is going to be a moment that we say, oh, no, don't like it anymore. It becomes suffering. True? So often we give the example of being in the sun and wanting the coolness of the shade, you know. So first we are in the sun and oh, so nice, so nice. And then it becomes hot. We want to be in the shade. And then the moment we go in the shade, it's like, oh, so nice. Right? And then we stay there. And at a certain point it becomes like, oh, a little bit chilly. I'm going to go back to the sun. And the moment I go in the sun is the best moment. You know, that's the most pleasure. But then that also becomes less until it becomes, you know, suffering. And then we go back in the shade. So this is what we do in life. We keep moving from pleasant experience to pleasant experience. And we never go to that point, or normally we never go to that point that it becomes suffering. And so then that is our happiness, right? How good are you in creating pleasurable experience after pleasurable experience? Which means, how good are you in making yourself happy? This is what is advertised in society, right? As happiness. True? You just think about everything that comes to you when you're on social media, all the things that you need to do in order to become happy. Oh, you're not doing this exercise 7 minutes a day, only 7 minutes a day, and you're not doing it. No wonder that you feel so miserable. Right? And then there's this exercise, and it's like, it's. So we made to believe it's your fault that you're not happy. It's your fault. If you would just do what I have, it's only $19.99 per month. If you do that, you're going to be happy. Right? Only 7 minutes a day, you're going to be happy. I promise you. Within 3 months, you will be a different person. 3 months may be too long. 3 weeks. The first week, you feel it. The second week, you start seeing it. The third week, other people see it. Right? This is what we are told. Why did I go there? Oh yeah, that is the suffering of change, you know. So we need to know that what is advertised is impossible. Life is not just pleasant feelings. Life is not just only happiness. Happiness and suffering comes and goes. We cannot have a life without suffering. It's impossible. Doesn't exist. It's a total illusion. Don't believe it if anybody tells you. Total illusion, not true. Suffering is part of life. And sometimes we get a bit of suffering on our plate. You know, and if we, I mean, in Buddhism, so this is this afternoon, we can talk about what we can do with suffering, because I think suffering is an incredible source of, it can become an incredible source of wisdom and compassion. You know, I don't learn wisdom and compassion independence upon happy feelings. It's not. Only when we go through some trouble, some difficult period of time, we learn something. Oh, now I learned something. I learned something about life. You cannot learn that anywhere except when we go through these difficult experiences. So for me, they are a gift. Not that I like them. Not that I think, oh, this is pleasure. No, it's hard. But I know that something very beneficial is going to come from that. So when I'm able to work through that, I will come out as a better human being, you know, with more wisdom, more compassion. So I don't resist unpleasant feelings. I do resist unpleasant feelings. I try. When I see my resistance, to bring some wisdom and say, oh, but actually, this might be a good thing. You know, can you take this? So that's the suffering of change. Right, pleasant feelings, and that that will definitely change into something unpleasant when we keep engaging with them. And so then the most subtle form of suffering is the all-pervasive compounded suffering, which is called, and that actually refers to our first reaction to feelings. When pleasant feelings arise in the mind, we automatically, there is the mind that says, oh, I want more of that. We might not think I want more of this feeling. We might think I want more of that chocolate or more of that coffee or more of that, whatever gives me that pleasant feeling. I want to be closer to this person because I have so many pleasurable feelings when I'm with that person. Right? So when pleasure arises in the mind and dependence upon something, the mind is drawn to that. What is drawing the mind is attachment. We don't need to think about it. It happens automatically. It's an emotion, disturbing, and this is disturbing emotion according to Buddhism. Do we recognize that attachment? It draws me towards something. When we get up to go there, we automatically do something that we like, which is going to give us pleasure. We don't have to think, oh, what shall I have today? Coffee or tea? Or what tea shall I have? What kind of... We know, we just go, oh, this. We don't have to think about it, right? So this is attachment. When unpleasant feelings arise in the mind, then the automatic reaction is aversion. I want to be separated from this. I don't like it. Right? I don't think that any one of us thinks unpleasant feelings, great. I'll take it. You know, there's first is the aversion. It's an automatic reaction. We don't need the brain or the cognitive functions in order to have that reaction. That is animals have the same reactions, you know. It is a reaction that happens on the level of the emotional mind or the amygdala, or even lower in the mind. It's like there's no choice. It happens automatically. That not having a choice, how we react, this is, according to Buddhism, that all-pervasive compounded suffering, the lack of freedom. We have no freedom. We think we're living in a free country. We think we can choose whatever we want. We think it's all an illusion. Sorry. Oh my God, I don't know why I have to hit you so hard with the hammer. It's all an illusion. What is controlling your life is your attachment. That is taking you from pleasure to pleasure to pleasure to pleasure. That attachment, following your attachment, is lack of freedom. It's not a freedom. Freedom means that whatever you put in front of me, I can look at it and I can enjoy it and I don't have to do anything with it. I don't have a pull towards it or a pull away from it. And sometimes we have these experiences, right? Where you see something beautiful and you just enjoy. Sometimes I see something beautiful and I say to the person, oh, that's a beautiful mug. Oh, you want to have it here? No, I don't want to have it, but I enjoy just looking at it. Right? But we have this habit that when I like it, I want to have it. Not always. 1 minute. Not always, but this is the tendency that we have. I like it, I want to have it. I like it, I want to be closer. I don't like it, I want to separate from it. This lack of freedom, this is the lack of freedom, which is the most subtle form of suffering, which is something that we are programmed like that. Deep, 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 deep inside us. We are programmed like that. We cannot just turn it off. We cannot. You know, and if we think about the very realized beings, they see how we are controlled by our attachment and aversion, and they have deep compassion for us because they see that we are not free. We are not free from that, nor can we just become free from that, not overnight. But with training the mind, yes, we can become free of that. And once we become free from attachment and aversion, there is the freedom of attachment and aversion. That is, according to Buddhism, real happiness. According to Buddhism, we are not striving for pleasures. That's not completely true. The way that we practice, we do like to create the causes for pleasant feelings, but it is not our main goal. The main goal is that we actually become free of the attachment and the aversion to the feelings that arise. Then when we are free of that, the mind is free. Nothing of that what is there now is there, and that freedom comes with an incredible joy that is innate, present within all of us, right? That joy gets the space to be there because it's not suppressed or we are not disconnected from it due to our attachment and aversion and all the reactions that come after that. So when we try to talk about freedom of suffering, we are talking about freedom of that in Buddhism. We are not talking about freedom of the suffering of suffering. We are talking about the freedom of reacting to the suffering that arises. Right? We cannot change. One time a teacher said, you know, when you practice Buddhism, we all have a path to go. We go through life, and life comes with problems, and it comes with suffering and whatever. And normally, when that happens, we go like this, right? We try to get away from the suffering and more towards the happiness. And he said, due to the practice of Buddhism, you just walk through it. There is no need to go like this anymore. You just walk through it. So it gives you a way that you are not affected by what is happening. And not affected doesn't mean that you don't feel it, but not affected means that you have more control over your automatic reactions. Right? And that control doesn't come from suppression, like, oh, I have aversion, I need to suppress that. No, control comes from understanding life, understanding the nature of the mind, understanding your potential, understanding the possibilities that you have for doing things in a different way, understanding that there are more perspectives than our own perspective. Right? So the more we develop wisdom, the more we become in control over our reactions to what is happening to us. It comes from understanding life that we gain control over our own mind. So that's not a control of suppression. It is a control of when things arise, you understand what is happening, so there's no need to react. So it's a very relaxed mind, right? Very relaxed mind. You just know, right? And if we see highly realized teachers, they're so calm, right? We say, oh, they're so calm. Because they know, they understand. And we feel that when they look at us and when they speak with us, they understand. They understand me. They can see me. They can see me beyond my crazy mind. They see something in me that is good and meaningful and that I feel that is my essence. They see that. And so when we find a teacher who can see that, that teacher can help us then to give us the courage that we start cleaning up all that stuff that we have put in our own mind, which is not us and has nothing to do with us, and we don't need it if we develop that wisdom and compassion. You had a question? Okay, good. Good. All right, so we are going to the causes of suffering. And so so there's the first noble truth we understand now, right, with the 3 levels of suffering, and we can see that in our own mind. So then when we think about the causes of suffering, what the Buddha taught in the second noble truth is that the causes of suffering are karma and delusions. So then we have to say, what is karma and what are the delusions? And so we talk about that until lunch. Karma means action. And if we think about what action, what am I talking about when I talk about action? Is that a verbal action? Is that a physical action? But according to the most profound school in Buddhism, karma actually refers to the intention for any action, whether that is a thought or a verbal action or a physical action. My intention, where do I move to, in what direction do I move my mind? Why do I do what I'm doing? Where do I come from? That is the meaning of karma. Every action that we are doing has a result. We know that the law of cause and effect, how that works in the material world, right? We know that everything that is there has a cause. And we know that when we create causes, there will be a result. And there is a predictability in that. True? It's not random. I cannot just do whatever and then something comes out of that which has nothing to do with that. Right? So cause and effect happens on the material world. In the same way, cause and effect happens on the level of consciousness. So the cause is our intention. And every cause that we create has an effect. An effect that has a relation to that cause. It's not random. So if I create a cause for happiness, happiness will definitely arise at some point in the future. And if I create a cause for suffering, then suffering will definitely arise somewhere in the future. Right? So it is important for us to understand, if we feel like I have fear and fear is suffering, where is it coming from? What causes did I create? And how can I do things differently? So then we can say, okay, so the cause is my action. And then the result is, for instance, fear. The result of actions refers to whatever we experience. So our feelings that arise in the mind are the experiences that we have in life. They are the result of our karma. They are the result of our actions. And we also call that karma sometimes, right? So we have a pain and then we, oh, it must be my karma. Right? But what we do is we think, can't do anything about it. Must be my karma. But karma means it is the result. We take karma as the beginning of doing nothing. Right? Oh, I'm hopeless. I have this experience. I can't do anything. No, from every experience, we can engage in an action. So we can think, okay, if I have the experience of being afraid, how do I go about? Because how I go about is going to determine my future. So when I have fear in the mind, I can reflect on what is it that I must have done that this fear is arising. And then what can I do so that in the future I don't create the causes for more fear to arise? And also that I don't do things that aggravate that fear reaction. You understand? So do we understand these two aspects of karma, cause and result? And that a result is not a punishment, right? We're not punished that we have fear, nor is the result something that we cannot do anything about it. We're not victims of the result, or the result doesn't make us into a victim. It's just an experience. And if we are skillful in how we are with that experience, it's just an experience. It is something that comes and goes, right? Any feeling that arises in the mind is something that comes and goes. Feelings in themselves cannot stay in the mind. What makes them stay in the mind is our reaction to the feelings. So feelings, they come and then they go, right? So I have an unpleasant feeling arising in the mind. It comes up, and then I actually say, no, I don't want that. I don't like that. I want to be separated from that. My aversion comes, I want to be separated from that. As long as I have that aversion, the feeling cannot come up. And when it cannot come up, it cannot dissolve. Right? If I would let my feelings come and go, they go up and they go down. They come and they go. Karma ripens and karma is finished. But if karma comes and I say, no, too painful, this is going to stay in my mind. And not only this is going to stay in my mind, also the aversion that I have is constantly agitating my mind. So I create more suffering for myself when I do that. My attempt to stop the suffering creates more suffering. So when we resist suffering, we create more suffering. When we avoid suffering, we create more suffering. Aversion arises in the mind, and it appears like, I'm going to make you free of suffering. That's the function of aversion. I'm going to make you free of suffering. But if we analyze it, it brings more suffering. So it looks like a protector, but it's actually a bully or something, you know. It's causing us much more suffering than we had. So our own system that looks like our protector looks like it's going to help us to become free of suffering is actually creating more suffering. And we need to see that before we can say, when aversion or anger arises in the mind, I'm not going to go there. Sorry, I'm not going to follow you. I know that you appear like you're going to make me free from suffering, but you're going to cause me a lot of trouble. Right? We need to know it so clearly. Because when aversion arises in the mind, when suffering arises and then aversion, and then maybe anger, it appears so true and so stupid when you don't come up for yourself, and so stupid when you let that suffering happen. True? We tell that to ourselves. Why don't you do something? Why do you let it happen? And I'm not saying that we have to let other people abuse us or whatever, but we have to learn to become skillful in how we are with whatever we experience. And our automatic reaction is not really helping us. It's actually causing problems, more problems. Can we see that? Same with attachment. Attachment is our reaction in dependence upon pleasant feelings. So when something pleasurable arises, when we come in contact with something that causes a pleasurable feeling to arise in the mind, attachment is right there. And attachment thinks, wow, I want to have that object, or when I'm close to that object or that person, I have more of these feelings. But is that true? So then we have to investigate, right? So just as aversion is promising us something, in the same way attachment is promising us something. And so if we look into the feeling again, pleasant feelings arise. And when they arise, they are about to leave the mind or dissolve back into the mind. Attachment says, hold on. I like a little bit more of this. I don't want this to go away. Right? So that grasping at these pleasant feelings, the grasping mind, how does that feel? You know this feeling that you have this, it's almost like when we are a little bit addicts, right? I want to have that. How does it feel? Even when we are excited about something. Oh, I'm going to wherever. Is that real happiness, or is that maybe some kind of suffering? It appears like happiness. But if we really feel, I don't know, you feel that it is happiness? There is a restlessness there, an anxiety. It's not calm, not peaceful, but I want it. I feel, yes?
So if I use an example, there's a feeling like getting angry, there's a compulsion to get angry.
No. There's no feeling of being angry. Angry is a reaction to a feeling. There is an unpleasant feeling, and then as a reaction to be separated from that feeling, anger arises in the mind. So we do this a lot. We equate the feeling with the reaction to the feeling. You're a psychologist?
Yeah. Okay. Just forgive me that I just got a question relating to.
Sure. No, you have to go with my definition.
Something that arises, then there's a compulsion to do it.
Yeah.
And then there's the actual doing it.
Yeah.
So the first two, late karma, and the last one is that affliction.
We call all the reactions to the feelings, we call them afflictions. So any uncontrolled reaction, the aversion and the attachment, they are the afflictions. So they are in the mind. And we can have afflictions in the mind without acting upon them. But we can also be impelled to do an action in dependence upon these afflictions. Compulsion, that uncontrolled reaction. The intention of that uncontrolled reaction in the mind is karma. The intention. Yeah, so when the intention is stronger, it's harder to stop. All the intentions are karma. And in every moment of the mind, we have intention. In every moment of the mind, we have feeling and we have intention. So in every moment of the mind, there is the experience of some karma, the result of some karma, and there is also the beginning, the cause of some karma. They arise both in the same mind, but they are related to different things. You understand? So, for instance, I have killed somebody in my last life, and so independence upon, and I actually did that with a lot of torture. So I made that person really, really afraid. And so as a result of that, that fear that I caused that other person is going to ripen one day in my mind. So then I see, maybe I'm just making something up, right? So I meet that person that I killed, but in a different form, and I cannot recognize them as, oh, that's the person. I can't remember any of that. But my mind is immediately afraid of that person, because somehow I know I did something that was not right, and I'm afraid that you're going to come back to me, right? So then that is the result of karma, what I feel, that fear that arises in the mind. And then I react to that. So I fully believe that you are the bad one, and I'm going to act upon that, right? So that is, I create new karma. I believe in the appearance that that feeling brings, and I act upon that, and I create new karma. So we keep going. Does that answer your question? Yeah. So that mixing of the feeling and the reaction to the feeling, that happens a lot, you know. And I think in order to become more effective in dealing with things, it's very useful to separate these two. It's that you see that we can nothing do about feelings that arise in the mind, but we can do something about how we react to that. And so if we have a different way of being with our feelings, especially with the unpleasant feelings, if we know how to be with them, we do not have to go so quickly in these reactions, or not so strong in the reactions, and we can actually turn things around in our life. We can really heal. We can really get to a place where we are free of certain pains and stresses and whatever unpleasantness that we have experienced. I do find it very difficult to see in my own mind, you know, the difference between feeling and reaction, because they come so quickly after each other that they look like the same thing. So I need to analyze, you know, what is the feeling, what is the reaction to the feeling. Feeling I cannot change. Feeling I need to experience. I need to create a condition that I can experience it. But the reaction, I can do something about that. So there's my power, and in both aspects is my power. Yeah. Did anybody else? Yeah.
Well, you haven't actually connected unless you give in to the compulsion.
The compulsion be, well, when the feeling is arising, I mean, as normal human beings, not as normal human beings, as we, not being in control of our mind, the reaction is always there. We are not free of that. But we are not free of that automatic reaction to the feeling.
Yeah, but the automatic reaction is a feeling, not an action.
No, it is an action.
So a feeling is an action.
No. So we have a feeling which is pleasant or unpleasant, and then in dependence on that feeling, I have a reaction. I want more of that, or I want to be separated from that. I want to have more of that is an automatic reaction. We don't have control over that at this moment in time.
But that's still a feeling, that's not an action. Because I have a feeling, yes, I want more of that, and then decide that I'm not going to.
Yeah. So the feeling I want more of that is a reaction, but then you don't act that out. Yes. You have, because you had that initial reaction is also karma. But the karma is much less than when you would act upon it, physically or verbally. No, you cannot stop reacting to the feelings. And I'm saying that we act upon every we react to every feeling that we have, whether we're aware of that or not, and whether we engage in further physical action or verbal action or not. There is the feeling arises and something happens in the mind. There is a reaction in the mind. And you can decide, I'm not that reaction. I agree. I am not that reaction, but we often believe that, right? I am that and I need to do that. But I can see I am not that reaction, but the reaction is there. I don't have to do anything with that. I don't have to follow that. But the initial reaction is there. That initial reaction is a tiny little karma. That reaction is an intention, but you don't make it bigger. You know, it's great if you can do that. It's fantastic. But if you want to get rid of that reaction, if you really want to get rid of that reaction, we need to realize the nature of reality. We need to realize emptiness. Then that reaction stops. Or we need to generate bodhicitta. Then that reaction is not there, right? But otherwise there is this tiny reaction, and that's still karma. But you know, even when we practice Buddhism, even when we engage in positive actions, right, there is always something that is still karma until we realize the nature of reality. Does it make us bad? Does it make that it's going to ripen? It doesn't mean that it is, you know, it is a natural thing that happens on our way to undoing the nature of samsara, not the nature of samsara, undoing our own samsara.
In that moment, is there competing good karma, stopping the reaction, against the bad karma, prompting you to react? So it can be like that.
Yeah, so this happens, right? We have this oh, I like that of you. I'm gonna take it, and then my wisdom mind says, oh, that's not so clever when you're going to do that. And in the beginning, I might have a struggle, and I might still go for it. But at a certain point, I can train my mind that I'm not going for it. And then if I keep training my mind, at a certain point, I don't even associate with that reaction anymore, right? But there can still be something as a habit or as a, you know, that arises naturally, but I don't have to do anything with it. And at a certain point, it might even die out in relation to certain actions. Yeah. Sorry, I can't change my story. Yes. Compassion is I would call it a response and not a reaction. So I call a reaction something that we have no control over, that happens automatically. And I think compassion is seen as a positive emotion. So it is a positive response to something that happens. Right? And when we really want to develop compassion, not just based on the, you know, we already have compassion at this moment, right? But our compassion is kind of biased. So we have compassion for the people that we like and that we love. But for the people that we don't like, and especially those who have really hurt me, I have the opposite of compassion, right? I wish them to suffer instead of being free of suffering. So our compassion at the moment is biased. So to generate compassion that is a really positive emotion, we need to train our mind, and we need to make that biased mind in a mind of equanimity, in which we have these feelings of wishing people to be free of suffering, that we have that in relation to everyone. Not just the people that we like, but also those that we don't like, those that we don't know, that we don't have specific feelings for. All right. Good. So we're talking a little bit about these disturbing emotions, the attachment and the aversion, and then everything that comes from that. So if I have aversion arising in the mind and I want to separate from certain feelings, when the feelings are extremely painful, that aversion becomes anger or agitation or something that is really, and maybe even hate and resentment and all these kind of things. We can put them in the reactions to negative feelings or unpleasant feelings, not negative, unpleasant feelings. Same for the reactions to positive feelings. We can put them in the bin or in the box of attachment. So there are many gradations of that, right? Up to addiction. Addiction is also coming from attachment. And then all the other disturbing emotions like jealousy and envy and pride, and they all arise in dependence upon attachment and aversion. So why attachment and aversion arise in the mind? That is an automatic reaction that has been happening according to Buddhism since beginningless time, which means that we have never been free of that, which means that these are deep-seated habits, but they are not the nature of the mind, which means that we can change them, we can transform them, we can do it differently. But if we had these habits since the beginning, even if we had them only from the beginning of this life, right? It's very difficult to change habits, right? We need to go through a kind of a training, a continuous training, or a training that, I think every time we do something, I think is positive. Even if we just observe, oh, I'm back in this old habit, that observation itself is part of your wisdom mind. That already is great if we can do that. So this attachment and these aversions, these reactions, they are deceptive. They are telling us something, but they are actually giving us the opposite. Right? Anger is telling, or aversion is telling us, I'm going to separate you from these pleasant feelings. But if we really look into what happens in the mind, when that reaction arises in the mind, we have more unpleasantness in the mind. It triggers more unpleasant feelings, more suffering. So it promises, I'll make you free of suffering, and it brings us more suffering. Attachment says, I'll bring you closer to the object that you desire. But in actuality, it will separate you from the object, and I will explain why it is like that. And I don't know if you have that experience, that if you see something and it is beautiful and you really want to have it, and then you have it, and you think, it's not doing it anymore. I thought this was going to make me happy, but it's not. Huh? You get used to it. Or after some time, maybe in the beginning it is nice, and then you get used to it, and then you don't see it anymore, right? That's also true, yes. So to explain you why attachment is separating you from the object that you desire, and I'm going to first explain why or where these reactions are coming from, why we have them in the mind. And according to Buddhism, these reactions always have been in our mind, and they are based upon not being able to see reality as it is. So not seeing reality has two aspects. One is I just cannot see it. For instance, I don't have the capacity at the moment to see through the wall, right? There are beings who can do that. So I can't see it. It is something that I cannot do. It is an ignorance that just doesn't have the capacity to do something. Many, many beings have that. Even if we are highly realized, it is not necessarily that we have these qualities straight away. But then there is another ignorance, which is called the ignorance that is a distorted knowing, which is an ignorance that sees things in the opposite way as that it exists in actuality. So something appears to you, but what exists actually in the opposite way. And so that is the suffering that we are, or that is the ignorance that we are really suffering from. And that is the ignorance that is the beginning of these automatic reactions that we have to feelings. And so that ignorance is based upon the way that we perceive the self, me, I. right? We all have this I inside us. Have you heard teachings on emptiness? Yeah. So we all have this. No, Jan, you haven't? Yeah, you have, right? Oh, you're thinking, there we go again. Emptiness. Yeah, I've heard that many times. I know it by now. But I still don't know what to do with that in my daily life. So we have this appearance of a self, right? Especially when we are in danger, especially when we are suffering, especially when we see something that excites us, right? The self jumps out as if it is a separate entity, sometimes even from the body and the mind. I don't know if your self sometimes jumps out like that. That it looks like it is almost here, you know? As if my eye just jumps out of my body. Oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm jumping out of my body. You have that? Am I the only one? So the self can appear as something that is its own entity, that is a entity, as if it is something that I can say, this is myself. It can feel in a way that I can point it out. Oh, I know what myself is. I don't see it always, but I do see it when somebody really hurts me. Or I do see it when I strongly want something, right? And all the other times, I know it's there, but I don't necessarily feel it that strong, right? But I know it's there. And when I know it is there, I do have a certain image of that self, what it is, and how it looks like. And how I believe that I exist is based upon these experiences that it has jumped out. True? Okay. The self. So the self can appear as something that exists as its own entity, and sometimes it appears as something that is separate from the body and the mind. Sometimes it can appear as something that is inside my body or inside my mind. Sometimes it can appear as something that is part of my mind, is kind of merged into my mind, but it doesn't have an exact location. Right? The self can appear as different things. Is that true? Sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like this, but somehow we know it's the same self. We don't think, oh, that's weird. Sometimes it appears like this, and sometimes like that, and sometimes like that. Right? If this would appear all the time as something different, we would think, what's happening to reality? That's crazy. But with ourselves, we somehow think that's normal. Right? So I have this self arising. So Buddhism says that self appears in a certain way, but it doesn't exist like that. So how does it appear? It appears as one thing. Even if it appears in many different ways, it's still one thing, isn't it? We don't say, actually, I have more selves than one. Some people do that, but normally we think I have one self. And the self can appear in many different ways, but it's still one self. Right? Unitary. It appears as something that is, it exists, it always has existed, it is just there, as if it doesn't have any causes and conditions. It arises naturally. You don't have to do anything for it. It's coming out of nowhere. It's always there. As if it doesn't arise in dependence upon causes and conditions. And then it appears as something that is independent of anything else. As if it is its own entity, separate from anything else. True? Can you see, if you think about your eye, can you think, yeah, I can, it appears kind of like that, or do you have another appearance in your mind? So that self, we believe in that self, that it exists in the way it appears, and then we act upon it. So that self that we have has needs, right? I need certain things in order to survive. I need a house, I need money, I need clothes, I need family, I need work, I have many needs that the self needs in order to survive. If I don't have all of that, I might have the feeling that I fade out of existence. You know, when we lose a job, we might have the feeling it is like a death. Like, how can I exist without my work? When our partner leaves us, how can I exist without my partner? You know, we have a crisis. How can I be here without that? Right? So that self has needs that need to be fulfilled in order to be validated, in order to be able to exist. And so these needs are normally provided by our attachment. And then that self also has a need for protection. Right? And that protection is that protection we find by using our aversion. So in dependence upon that self that appears in a certain way, we start engaging in actions to fulfill the needs of that self, whether that is giving something what they need or whether that is giving them protection what they need. And then the way that we give the self what they need is driven by that attachment. And the way that we give protection is driven by that aversion, by separating from something that feels dangerous. Right? So this aversion and attachment is coming in dependence upon that appearance of self. And so then Buddhism says, well, the self appears like that, but how does it exist? And then we start analyzing that self. So it appears as if it is coming from nowhere, as if it does not arise in dependence upon causes and conditions. Can anything in this world exist like that? Is there anything in the world that exists in a way that it does not arise in dependence upon causes and conditions? And there are a few things in Buddhism, but in general we can say all the things that are in this world arise in dependence upon causes and conditions. So therefore also the self. It doesn't appear like that, but it exists like that. And so then we look into that, the unitary thing of the self, right? The self appears as one thing. And then we can think about everything that exists and think, is this just one thing? It is one thing, right? It is a little ball. But does it have parts? Can I dissect it into many different parts? You know, I have a lid and I have a knot and I have different colors and different materials. And so this thing that appears as one thing also exists out of many parts. It does not only exist out of one thing. But when we looked at the self, it only appears as one thing. We never think, this is part of me, this is part of me, this is part of me. When the rational mind comes, we can do that. But when we are in daily life, it is one thing that appears. And then the way that it appears as if it is standing on its own, independent upon anything else. Not created by causes and conditions, not arising in dependence upon its parts, not even arising in dependence upon my mind. Totally independent. And so then Buddhism says, well, nothing can exist totally independent upon anything else. Cannot. Nothing exists in a way that it was always there, it will always be there, it's never changing, it doesn't depend upon anything, not on the weather, not on any causes and conditions, not on what I'm doing, not on how I see it, not on... And Buddhism says nothing can exist like that. Right? So things depend. So the I, the self that arises, it appears in a certain way, but it cannot exist like that. And in dependence on that appearance of the self, we have these reactions of attachment and aversion. So when the self is deceptive, when it appears in a way that is not in accordance with reality, also the reactions that arise in dependence on that are not in accordance with reality. True? That's the logic. But these reactions is the only thing we have to live life, right? So then we have to say, oh my God, then what can I do? How do I going to do things differently if this is actually not even based on reality itself? You're all starting to look tired, or you are full in meditation. I'm not sure. So what we call that self, that appearance of the self, we call that the self-grasping mind. And then all the reactions that arise in dependence upon that is called the self-cherishing mind. And so we hear that in Buddhism, right? The self-grasping mind and the self-cherishing mind. The self-cherishing mind, these reactions, the best way to transform them is by generating a mind that is not just focused on my benefit, because that is what the self-cherishing mind is, right? Myself is in danger, or myself needs something, and I'm going to react from that. But if I change that focus into taking care of others, I change the perspective of that mind. And it's not about me anymore. But I use these reactions, you know, my wish to be happy, my wish to give myself what I need, my wish to protect myself. I apply that to everyone. I have the wish to nourish you, I have the wish to protect you, I have the wish to give you what you need, I have the wish to... And if I keep doing that, I change the habit of that self-cherishing mind. And then these reactions that are only about me, they become more and more weak. Right? So that is one way of doing that. And then if we talk about the self-grasping mind, in order to counteract that, you know, that holding on to something, to holding on to the self in a way that it doesn't exist in actuality, in order to counteract that, we need to think about reality. How does reality exist? So in order to counteract the self-grasping mind, we need to develop our wisdom mind. We need to look into reality. How do things work? How do things function? How do things exist? Right? So we are deceived by our own perception due to our ignorance that has been there since beginningless time. And so due to that deception, we have certain habits that are also deceptive. And because they are deceptive, they can never bring us what we want. They can never bring us what they promise us they're going to bring us. So aversion cannot bring us protection from suffering, only brings more suffering. In the same way, attachment cannot bring us closer to the object. Why? We say attachment exaggerates the positive qualities of an object. So I project something on the object which is not there. Right? And we know that that happens, for instance, when we fall in love, right? That's the main attachment kick that we can get, the biggest one. We fall in love, everything inside us starts going crazy. And we see all these amazing qualities in the person that we fall in love with. Amazing qualities. No faults, only amazing qualities. Everybody knows what's going on for us. And we think, why doesn't everybody see that? And we are the only person, right? And we think, why is not, it's so fantastic. And our friends say, really, really? Anyway, we know the stories, right? So what we do is this attachment that we have that wants to be close to that person has all these positive aspects which are not in that person, and then projects them on that person and says, I want to be close to that because it gives me so many good feelings. The moment that that attachment starts to fade, which is, I think, after 6 to 8 months, the hormones, they start to disappear a little bit. Certainly we wake up and we think, I never saw that before, but this is a really weird habit, right? Then we start seeing that person for what it is. So if I create an image on independence upon a person and then want to be close to that person can never give me what I want, cannot live up to my expectations because that person doesn't exist like that. So we want to be closer to that. But because of our own mind, we make that, we can never become close to that because it doesn't exist. We create something that doesn't exist. Right? And then you get marriage problems, and then you're going to divorce, and then you try it again, and attachment still works the same, and then, right? This is a little bit of drama that we are in. Yes. So these are the causes of our suffering, and the main one being that reaction. If we can deal with that reaction, or if we can find a way to stop that, also karma cannot ripen anymore. Because normally what ripens the karma is these automatic reactions, these disturbing emotions. So when we can stop that, whatever karma is left in our mind cannot be triggered anymore, cannot come to fruition. Right? So in Buddhism, we say the main thing that we want to do in order to change life is that we deal with these disturbing emotions, our reactions to what happens to us. So that workshop is in the mind, right? It's not anywhere else. Which is very empowering, right? We can say, oh, that sucks. Can't blame anyone anymore. Only can blame myself. No, it's not blaming yourself. It's finding your own power. I actually have the power to do something. And the power is right there. And it's not too difficult. It is difficult, but it's not too difficult. Right? Because we're changing a habit that was there for a long time, and we have strong belief in that habit. So changing that, because it keeps appearing, but it appears like that. But it doesn't exist like that. And then living in a society where everybody believes that however things appear, it exists like that, makes it more difficult. Right? Because you're going to say, but I don't believe in my own aversion and attachment, and your friends are going to say, are you insane? Then what is going to make you happy and what is going to protect you? And we might have that question ourselves, right? So we need to answer that so that you feel safe in trying to change that habit, in letting go of that mechanism inside yourself that you have been relying upon for lifetimes, to say, but it's actually more safe if I'm going to change it. It's going to bring me much more benefit if I'm going to change it. Yes, one question.
Karma and trying to purify that karma by not engaging in the reaction. Is the karma still, are you still exhausting that karma?
I think so. No, you're not putting it aside. No. So how can we fully experience? Yeah, I think exhausting that karma, I would go to the feeling and fully experiencing the feeling. Because when you have the tools to do that, karma is gone. Once you have felt it, karma is gone. Yeah. But with working on the mind, it's not that we then pushing away the karma. It's not like that. but we might say, I want to trigger other karmas. I want to develop or I say, let other karmas ripen that are more positive and then use that in order to develop my mind, right? Because if we have a lot of negative karma, it's not really nice to be on the path. The path is not easy, and we like to have a lot of positive experiences while on the path, which comes also from karma, no? But we're going to talk about that after the lunch. So this was the truth of suffering and the truth of the cause of suffering. So then after lunch, we'll start with the truth of cessation, and then with the truth of the path, it's like, what can we do? All right? Thank you very much.